heavy wooden door slammed open. "All rise." The courtroom sprang to its feet as the judge walked in. Reporters rushed to lift their cameras. Families whispered nervously. Even the lawyers looked toward the entrance with puzzled faces. A small boy in a neatly pressed navy blue suit stepped through the doors, clutching a worn leather notebook against his chest. He couldn't have been older than 10. The room fell silent. Is that a child?" someone whispered. Another voice laughed quietly. "Did someone bring him on a school trip?" The boy ignored every stare. His face was calm, but his hands tightened around the notebook. At the defense table sat a man in faded prison clothes with handcuffs around his wrists. His hair had turned gray long before its time, and deep lines covered his face. When he looked up and saw the boy, his eyes widened. "Noah." The boy smiled gently. "Hi, Dad." Daniel Carter's heart sank. "What are you doing here?" Before Noah could answer, the judge adjusted his glasses. "Counsel, would someone explain why there's a child seated at the defense table?" A respected attorney, Evelyn Brooks, rose to her feet. "Your Honor, Noah Carter is here with my permission." The prosecutor frowned. "Surely this is inappropriate." Mrs. Brooks remained calm. "He isn't here to argue the law." The prosecutor smirked. "Good. Because the law requires lawyers, not children." Soft laughter spread through the courtroom. Noah lowered his eyes but said nothing. Daniel leaned closer. "You shouldn't be here." "I have to be." "No." Daniel shook his head. "You've already done enough." Noah looked directly into his father's tired eyes. "I haven't done the most important part yet." Daniel's voice broke. "Son, please." For 15 years Daniel had carried one burden heavier than prison. Watching his son grow up through thick glass. Birthdays. Christmases. School awards. Every important moment. Seen from the visitor's room. He never wanted Noah carrying the weight of his mistakes, even though they weren't his mistakes to carry. The bailiff called for silence. The judge opened the case file. This hearing concerns the appeal of Daniel Carter, convicted 15 years ago of armed robbery and aggravated assault. The prosecutor stood confidently. "Your Honor, this conviction has survived multiple appeals. The evidence was overwhelming. The state requests that this appeal be dismissed immediately." Mrs. Brooks slowly stood. "The defense requests permission to present newly discovered evidence." The prosecutor rolled his eyes. "Again." Mrs. Brooks didn't react. This evidence was overlooked for 15 years. The judge leaned forward. "What kind of evidence?" Mrs. Brooks glanced toward Noah. "The kind discovered by Daniel Carter's son." The courtroom exploded with whispers. "A child found evidence. That's impossible. This is ridiculous." The judge struck his gavel. "Order." Daniel closed his eyes. He hated this. Everyone was looking at Noah like he was some kind of joke. He whispered, "I'm sorry." Noah reached over and gently placed his hand on his father's. "You've apologized for 15 years. You don't have to anymore." If you're enjoying this story so far, take a moment to subscribe, like this video, and let us know in the comments. Do you believe a child can change the course of justice? Your support helps us bring you more emotional stories like this. The judge nodded toward Mrs. Brooks. "You may proceed." She opened a folder. "Before we discuss today's evidence, the court deserves to understand why this boy refused to stop fighting." Daniel lowered his head. He already knew what was coming. 15 years earlier, police sirens echoed through the quiet neighborhood. Daniel was closing his small auto repair shop when 3 police cars surrounded him. "Daniel Carter." He turned around. "Yes." "Put your hands where we can see them." Confused, Daniel slowly raised his hands. "What's happening?" An officer grabbed him roughly. "You're under arrest for the armed robbery of First National Savings Bank." Daniel stared at him. "There has to be some mistake. You can explain that downtown." Customers watched from across the street. Neighbors pulled out their phones. Someone whispered, I always knew something was strange about him. Daniel kept saying the same words. I didn't rob anyone. I've never even been inside that bank. Nobody listened. Later that night, his wife Sarah arrived at the police station carrying their 6-month-old baby. She rushed to the holding cell. Daniel. He stood and gripped the bars. Sarah, thank God. She looked into his eyes. Tell me the truth. I didn't do this. She didn't hesitate. I know. Daniel blinked. You, believe me. Without question. Tears filled his eyes. They're saying a witness identified me. Sarah frowned. Then the witness is wrong. She reached through the bars and held his hand. I'm going to bring you home. Daniel managed a weak smile. I knew you'd say that. Sarah wasn't just his wife. She was one of the most respected defense attorneys in the city. She believed facts mattered more than rumors. And she trusted Daniel more than anyone. Weeks later, the courtroom was packed. The prosecution sounded confident. We have an eyewitness who clearly identified Daniel Carter leaving the scene. A middle-aged man walked to the witness stand. I'll never forget his face. Sarah stood. You claim you saw my client from across the parking lot? Yes. And you're certain? I'd bet my life on it. Sarah questioned him for nearly an hour. But every answer sounded certain. The jury listened carefully. Daniel watched their faces. He could almost see their opinions changing. Not in his favor. Then another witness claimed Daniel had argued with the bank manager a week before the robbery. It wasn't true. Daniel had never met the man. But each false statement pushed the jury further away. After 3 long days, the verdict came. Guilty. Sarah closed her eyes. Daniel stood frozen. The judge spoke words that echoed through the courtroom. Daniel Carter, this court sentences you to 15 years in state prison. A loud sob escaped Sarah. Daniel turned toward her. No. She rushed forward before officers pulled him away. I'll appeal. He shook his head. They won't listen. They will. They have to. An officer pulled Daniel toward the exit. He looked back one last time. Sarah was holding baby Noah tightly against her shoulder. The little boy reached his tiny hand toward his father. Daniel stretched his own hand as far as the chains allowed. Their fingertips never touched. As the prison doors closed behind Daniel that day, neither father nor son knew that it would take 15 years, and one extraordinary question, for justice to finally find its way home. The prison gates closed behind Daniel with a heavy clang that echoed through the cold hallway. He stopped walking. For just a second. He turned back, hoping to catch one last glimpse of Sarah and Noah. The steel door slammed shut before he could. That sound haunted him for years. Every morning, Sarah woke before sunrise. Every evening, she came home long after dark. Her office became a mountain of files. Court transcripts, police reports, witness statements, maps, photographs. She spread everything across the dining table until there wasn't even room to eat. Little Noah would crawl between the stacks of paper while she worked. One night, Daniel called from prison. Sarah. She smiled the moment she heard his voice. How are you? I should be asking you that. I'm fine. You sound tired. She laughed softly. I've had coffee. That's not what I asked. There was a long silence. Finally she admitted. I'm close. Daniel frowned. Close to what? I know someone lied. Can you prove it? Not yet. You need to rest. I'll rest when you're home. Daniel closed his eyes. I hate watching you carry this alone. You aren't alone. I am until you're sitting across this table again. Daniel smiled despite himself. You always were stubborn. I learned from my husband. For the first time in months, they both laughed. Years passed. Every appeal failed. Every motion was denied. Every request for a new trial was rejected. People slowly stopped believing Daniel. Friends disappeared. Neighbors stopped calling. Even distant relatives whispered. If he were really innocent, he'd be home by now. Sarah ignored every word. One rainy afternoon she walked into her office carrying another box of documents. Her assistant looked concerned. "You've been working 16-hour days." "I know." "You missed lunch." "I know." "You missed dinner yesterday too." Sarah smiled. "I'll eat after I finish this." "You've been saying that for 3 years." Sarah looked at the wall. There was a framed picture of Daniel holding baby Noah. "I'm running out of time." Her assistant frowned. "What do you mean?" Sarah looked exhausted. "I can feel it. You need to see a doctor." "I'm seeing one tomorrow." The next day changed everything. Sarah sat quietly inside the doctor's office. The doctor folded his hands. The test results came back. Sarah already knew. "It isn't good." He shook his head gently. "I'm afraid it's an aggressive heart condition." She stared at the floor. "Can it be treated?" "We can slow it." "Can it be cured?" The silence answered her question. Her first thought wasn't about herself. It was about Daniel. Her second thought was Noah. That evening she picked Noah up from school. He was only 9 years old now. "Mom." "Yes." "Why are you smiling?" "Because I get to spend the afternoon with my favorite person." He grinned. "I thought Dad was your favorite." "He is." "You said person." "I did. So I'm your favorite little person." She laughed. "You caught me." Instead of going home, she took him to the park. They bought ice cream, fed ducks, played on the swings. For a few precious hours. She wasn't a lawyer. She was simply a mother. As the sun began to set, she handed Noah the old leather notebook she always carried. He looked confused. "Mom. I want you to keep this." "The notebook?" She nodded. "It has everything." "What everything?" "My notes. My questions. The things nobody else noticed." He carefully turned the first page. Every sheet was covered with handwriting. Maps, dates, names, questions circled in red ink. "I don't understand any of this." "You don't have to." "Not today." She placed her hand gently on his shoulder. "Noah. If one day I'm not here." His smile disappeared. "Don't say that." She forced another smile. "Just listen." He slowly nodded. She pointed at the notebook. "This isn't about proving your father innocent." "It isn't." "No. It's about finding the truth." "What if the truth is different from what we want?" "Then we accept it." "And if the truth proves Dad didn't do it?" "Then never stop fighting for it." He looked into her eyes. "I promise. No matter how hard it gets. I promise. No matter who laughs at you. I promise. No matter how long it takes." Tears filled his eyes. "I promise." Sarah pulled him into a tight hug. "That's my brave boy." A month later, Daniel was waiting in the prison visiting room. He smiled when he saw Noah walking in. Then he noticed something. Sarah wasn't beside him. Daniel stood immediately. "Noah." The boy's eyes were red. Mrs. Evelyn Brooks walked in behind him. Daniel's smile slowly faded. "What happened?" Nobody answered. Daniel looked at Evelyn. "What happened?" She swallowed hard. "Sarah." His heart stopped. "Passed away yesterday." Daniel grabbed the edge of the table to keep himself standing. "No. I'm so sorry." "No." He kept shaking his head. "No." Prison guards looked away. Even they couldn't watch. Daniel fell into the chair. His hands covered his face. A sound escaped him that Noah had never heard before. His father wasn't crying. He was breaking. Noah walked around the table, ignoring the guard's warning. He wrapped both arms around his father. Daniel held him tightly. "I'm sorry." Noah shook his head. "Mom made me promise." Daniel looked at him. "Promise what?" That I'd never stop looking for the truth. Daniel wiped away his tears. Noah. Listen to me. He held his son's shoulders. I don't want you spending your life chasing this. But I want you to play football. I want you to make friends. I want you to laugh. I want you to have the childhood I couldn't give you. Noah looked down at the notebook in his hands. I can't. Daniel frowned. Why? Because every night you sleep in here. Someone else is sleeping in our house. Daniel looked confused. What do you mean? The person who really did it. Daniel couldn't answer. Noah held up the notebook. I'm going to finish what Mom started. Daniel gently pushed the notebook back toward him. No, I'm asking you as your father. Let it go. Noah looked him straight in the eyes. I can't let go of the only thing Mom asked me to hold on to. Daniel stared at his son. For the first time, he realized he wasn't looking at a little boy anymore. He was looking at Sarah. The same determination. The same courage. The same refusal to quit. If this story has touched your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more powerful stories of hope and justice. And tell us below, if you were Noah, would you keep fighting for your father, or would you try to move on? Mrs. Brooks quietly watched them both. Then she looked at the worn leather notebook in Noah's hands. She had seen that notebook before. Sarah never let it out of her sight. If Sarah had entrusted it to Noah, there had to be a reason. And for the first time in years, Evelyn Brooks began to wonder if the truth had been hiding in those pages all along. Mrs. Evelyn Brooks couldn't sleep that night. Sarah's notebook sat on her desk. She had promised herself she wouldn't open it. It felt too personal, too painful. But one sentence Sarah had written on the first page refused to leave her mind. If you're reading this, it means I ran out of time. Please don't let Daniel run out of hope. Evelyn slowly turned the page. Every line was written with purpose. No wasted words. Every question had another question beside it. Every answer had a note that read, verify. She whispered to herself, Sarah, what did you find? The next afternoon, Noah knocked on her office door. She smiled faintly. You came. I said I would. He placed another stack of files on her desk. I found these in Mom's office. Evelyn looked surprised. You've been organizing her files. Every weekend. She blinked. You've read all of these. No, I've tried. She smiled. That's more honest. Noah shrugged. I don't understand most of the legal words. But I understand questions. Evelyn leaned back. What do you mean? My mom always said people lie. But facts don't. Evelyn froze. Sarah used to say those exact words. Almost every day. She nodded. Your mother was right. From that day on, every Saturday became the same. Noah would finish his homework, ride his bicycle to Evelyn's office, and spend hours helping her organize files. At first, Evelyn only let him sort papers. Then she noticed something. Noah remembered details. Small details. Things most adults overlooked. One afternoon she asked, Can you find the witness statement from Richard Hale? Noah searched for less than a minute. Blue folder. Second shelf. Behind the tax records. Evelyn laughed. You have a better memory than I do. Noah smiled. I've read that statement 6 times. Why? Because something bothers me. What? He says he was walking his dog. So? What was the dog's name? Evelyn frowned. I don't know. Exactly. She looked confused. Noah continued. If someone asked me where I was yesterday, I'd say I was walking Maximum. I wouldn't say I was walking my dog. Evelyn stared at him. That tiny detail had never crossed her mind. She opened the file again. Richard never once mentioned the dog's name. Not during police questioning. Not during trial. Not during cross-examination. Strange. Very strange. Weeks later, Noah visited his father again. Daniel smiled the moment he saw him. "You've grown. You say that every month." "Because it's true." They laughed. Daniel noticed dark circles under Noah's eyes. "Are you sleeping enough?" "Yes." "You hesitated." "I've been reading." "Storybooks." Noah smiled nervously. "Not exactly." Daniel sighed. "The notebook again." Noah stayed quiet. Daniel reached across the table. "Son, I don't want your childhood to become a courtroom." "It won't. It already has." Noah looked into his father's eyes. "Do you remember the camping trip?" Daniel smiled immediately. "The lake. You taught me how to fish. You caught one. It was tiny. You still celebrated." Daniel laughed. "You named that fish. I called him Lucky. You cried when we threw him back." They both laughed. The laughter slowly faded. "I want more memories like that," Daniel said quietly. "Not memories of prison visits." Noah swallowed hard. "So come home." Daniel's smile disappeared. "It isn't that simple." "It should be." "It isn't." "It will be." Daniel looked at him carefully. "You sound just like your mother." "I hope so." Before Daniel could answer, visiting time ended. The guard called out, "Time." Daniel stood. "So soon?" Noah nodded. He picked up the notebook. Daniel noticed it again. "You still carry it everywhere." "It reminds me of Mom. It reminds me of work. It reminds me of hope." Daniel smiled sadly. "It reminds me of everything I lost." Noah shook his head. "No. It reminds us of what we're going to get back." Daniel watched his son walk away. For the first time in years, he wanted to believe. Months passed. One afternoon, Noah burst into Evelyn's office without knocking. "I found something." Evelyn looked up. "What happened?" He spread 3 documents across her desk. "I was comparing dates. And look." She adjusted her glasses. One document was Richard Hale's testimony. Another was the police timeline. The third, an electricity company maintenance report. Evelyn frowned. "What am I looking at?" Noah pointed to one line. "There." She read it aloud. "Emergency power outage affecting the downtown district from 9:02 p.m. until 10:11 p.m. So." Noah grabbed the trial transcript. "Read Richard's testimony." She did. "I clearly saw Daniel Carter's face at approximately 9:17 p.m. as he ran across the parking lot." Evelyn stopped reading. She looked back at the outage report. Then at Noah. Then back again. Her breathing became heavier. "No." Noah nodded slowly. There were no street lights. No shop lights. No parking lot lights. No electricity. Evelyn stood so quickly that her chair rolled backward. "My goodness." She searched through more files. Maps. Photos. Evidence logs. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. The parking lot had been in complete darkness. She whispered, "How did we miss this?" Noah answered quietly, "Because everyone believed the witness. Nobody checked whether he could actually see." Evelyn sat down. She covered her mouth. 15 years. One overlooked document. One forgotten report. One impossible statement. She looked at Noah with tears in her eyes. "Do you understand what you found?" He nodded. "I think so." "No." She shook her head. "You may have just found the reason your father lost 15 years of his life." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Evelyn reached for the phone. Her hands were trembling. Noah asked softly, "Who are you calling?" She smiled for the first time in years. "The courthouse. It's time to ask a judge for one last hearing." As the phone rang, neither of them knew that the call they were about to make would lead them back into the same courtroom where Daniel had been condemned 15 years earlier, and where one simple question was about to change everything forever. Mrs. Brooks waited anxiously as the phone rang. Clerk's office. This is Attorney Evelyn Brooks. I'd like to file an emergency motion based on newly discovered evidence. There was a brief pause. What kind of evidence? The kind that could prove an innocent man spent 15 years in prison. 3 weeks later, the courtroom was full again. Word had spread across the city. People wanted to see the strange case where a 10-year-old had helped reopen a conviction everyone thought was settled. Reporters filled the front row. Television cameras pointed toward the defense table. The prosecutor looked irritated. This is nothing more than another delay. Mrs. Brooks answered calmly. If you're right, you'll have nothing to worry about. The judge entered. Be seated. He looked around the courtroom. We are here to determine whether newly discovered evidence warrants overturning the conviction of Daniel Carter. He looked toward Mrs. Brooks. You may proceed. She stood. The defense calls Richard Hale. The same witness from 15 years ago slowly walked toward the stand. He looked older. His confidence was gone. After taking the oath, he sat down. Mrs. Brooks approached. Mr. Hale, 15 years ago you testified that you clearly saw Daniel Carter leaving the bank. Yes. You remain certain. He nodded. I do. The prosecutor smiled. Mrs. Brooks walked back to her table. Your Honor. The defense requests permission for Noah Carter to ask the witness one question. The courtroom erupted. A child. This is unbelievable. The prosecutor jumped to his feet. Absolutely not. This is a courtroom, not a stage. Mrs. Brooks remained composed. The question comes directly from the evidence submitted to this court. The judge looked at Noah. The boy sat quietly, holding the same worn notebook. After a long silence, the judge spoke. One question. No more. Mrs. Brooks nodded. Thank you, Your Honor. Daniel's heart pounded. He grabbed Noah's arm gently. You don't have to do this. Noah smiled. I know. I'm choosing to. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. I'm proud of you. Noah took a deep breath. Then he stood. Every eye in the courtroom followed him. You could hear shoes scraping against the floor. You could hear cameras clicking. Even the air seemed still. Noah stopped a few feet from the witness stand. He looked up at Richard Hale. His voice was calm. Good morning, sir. Richard forced a smile. Good morning. Noah opened the notebook. My mother taught me something. Richard said nothing. She said the truth never changes. He looked directly at the witness. I only have one question. Richard nodded confidently. Go ahead. Noah lifted a document. This is an official report from the City Electric Company. Mrs. Brooks handed a copy to the judge. Another to the prosecutor. Another to the witness. Noah continued. It says the entire downtown area lost power at 9:02 that night. Richard looked at the paper. His hands began to tremble. Noah spoke again. You testified under oath that you clearly recognized my father's face at 9:17 p.m. He paused. The courtroom was completely silent. Then Noah asked, if the entire parking lot was in complete darkness, how did you clearly see my father's face? Silence. Richard stared at the document. His mouth opened. No words came out. The prosecutor stood. Answer the question. Richard swallowed. Noah waited patiently. I don't remember. Noah quietly replied. I didn't ask what you remembered. I asked how you saw him. Richard's breathing became faster. Sweat rolled down his forehead. Mrs. Brooks spoke softly. Mr. Hale. You're still under oath. Richard closed his eyes. Then his shoulders dropped. I couldn't. The courtroom gasped. I couldn't see his face. The prosecutor looked stunned. What did you just say? Richard's voice shook. I never saw his face. The room exploded with whispers. The judge struck the gavel repeatedly. Order! Order! Mrs. Brooks stepped closer. Then why did you identify Daniel Carter? Richard looked toward Daniel. Tears filled his eyes. I'm sorry. I was scared. The detectives kept telling me they already had the right man. They said they only needed me to confirm it. The prosecutor shouted. Objection. The judge slammed the gavel. Overruled. Mrs. Brooks continued. Did anyone pressure you to testify? Richard nodded slowly. Yes. They told me if I refused, they would investigate me as an accomplice. Another wave of whispers swept through the courtroom. Mrs. Brooks wasn't finished. She called the second witness, the former bank employee. After hearing Richard's confession, the man couldn't even look at Daniel. Mrs. Brooks asked quietly, Did you really hear Daniel threaten the bank manager? The man lowered his head. No. Why did you testify that you did? They offered me a reduced sentence in another case. Daniel stared at him in disbelief. You lied. The man nodded. I'm sorry. I've regretted it every day. The courtroom became silent again. The judge looked toward the prosecutor. Does the state wish to continue defending this conviction? The prosecutor slowly stood. For the first time all morning, he had no argument. He looked at the evidence, then at Daniel, then at Noah. The state. He took a deep breath. Moves to vacate the conviction. Daniel couldn't believe what he had heard. Mrs. Brooks smiled through her tears. The judge removed his glasses. This court finds that Daniel Carter's conviction was obtained through unreliable testimony and the suppression of critical facts. He looked directly at Daniel. Mr. Carter, your conviction is hereby overturned. For the record, you are a free man. Daniel covered his face. He broke down completely. The bailiff stepped forward and removed the handcuffs from his wrists. For 15 years, the weight of steel had become part of his life. Now, they fell to the floor with a loud clatter. Daniel slowly stood. He looked at Noah. Neither of them moved. Then Noah ran. Dad! Daniel caught him in his arms. They held each other tightly. Neither wanted to let go. The courtroom watched in silence. Even the judge wiped away a tear. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded them. One reporter held out a microphone. Noah, are you really your father's lawyer? Noah smiled. No, I'm just his son. Another reporter asked. Then how did you solve a case trained lawyers couldn't solve? Noah looked down at the worn notebook. My mom taught me something. He looked back up. She said people can forget. They can lie. They can make mistakes. But if you keep looking, the truth is always waiting. Mrs. Brooks rested a hand on Noah's shoulder. Your mother would be proud. Daniel smiled. She already is. Months later, life slowly returned to normal. Daniel reopened his little repair shop. Customers came back. Neighbors who once doubted him stood in line to apologize. Some apologized with words. Others simply shook his hand. Daniel accepted every apology. But he never forgot the 15 years he had lost. One afternoon, he watched Noah sitting at the kitchen table. The old leather notebook lay open in front of him. Daniel smiled. You still reading law books? Noah grinned. Every day. What do you want to be when you grow up? Noah closed the notebook. A lawyer. The kind who asks the question everyone else forgot to ask. Daniel laughed softly. I think you'll be a great one. Years later, a young attorney walked through the doors of the same courthouse. In his briefcase was an old leather notebook. Its pages were worn. Its corners were bent. But every word inside still mattered. Before entering the courtroom, he looked up and smiled. Thanks, Mom. Then he walked inside, ready to give another family the justice his own had waited 15 years to receive. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who still believes that truth and perseverance can overcome even the greatest injustice. And tell us in the comments, Asterisk, what was the most powerful moment in Noah's journey?